Welcome, folks. My name is Jim Abraham. I'm the Vice President of the Canadian Meteorological and Oceanographic Society, and it's really a pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker this morning, Diane Campbell. Diane started her career with Environment Canada, actually as a summer student, and she progressed through water quality research roles to a variety of water-related and earth science management roles, both with Environment Canada as well with Natural Resources Canada. And then in 2008, Diane and I became colleagues and good friends when she was appointed as the Director General of Prediction Services with the Meteorological Service of Canada. And since that time, she's been appointed as the Assistant Deputy Minister with the MSC. And for those of you who don't know, the Assistant Deputy Minister is the big boss. So she's the boss of the Weather Service. And also that position involves being Canada's permanent representative with the World Meteorological Organization. And Diane will talk a little bit about some of the international responsibilities as well. Diane is a really strong supporter of people and really focused on service delivery and mission. I talk about often compliance-driven managers and mission-driven managers, and certainly Diane is a mission-driven manager. And as well as Merrick said a little earlier, I really have to thank Diane for her leadership to engage us in CMOS to help celebrate the 150 years of weather services in Canada. And as Merrick said, we have over 400 Congress participants from Environment and Climate Change Canada, and really that's amazing. I welcome you. There's some further details and tidbits about Diane, not only on the CMOS website, but also the Meteorological Service of Canada has a special site that celebrates the people of Environment Canada. And there's some tidbits about Diane there. And today's going to be a warm day in Ottawa, and I expect she might want to take a drive in her Mazda Miata convertible. I don't know what color it is, but I'm only guessing that it's red. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane, and she's going to share weather services in Canada, our history, and our future.
Thank you very much, Jim. And actually, my Miata is a Metropolitan Gray. But thank you, Jim. It's lovely to see you again and be working with you in this session. And a very big thank you to CMOS for all the great preparations for this Congress. So we're really pleased to be engaging, and hopefully this is just the start of that kind of participation going forward in future Congresses. And I'm also very pleased to be with you today to talk about the evolution of weather services globally and in Canada. And as Jim said, it's a special year. We're celebrating 150 years of weather services in Canada. And when we say we're celebrating, we mean that the weather enterprise is all part of this celebration. And this journey began with a $5,000 federal government investment, a grant, that was approved on May 1st in 1871. And that was targeted at establishing a network of weather observing stations. And that was the start. But through the decades, the collaborations with academia, with other levels of government, the private sector, and the international community have really shaped not only our past, but they're going to continue to shape our future as we work together to provide the services that our citizens need and help them stay safe and resilient, particularly when adapting to a changing climate. And if we move to the second slide, you know, extreme weather continues to rank amongst the top most likely and most impactful risks, according to the latest World Economic Forum risk report from 2021. And then according to the Munich Reinsurance Company, global losses from natural disasters in 2020 hit $270 billion, significantly higher than previous years. And these risks include major property, infrastructure, environmental damage, as well as human life loss. And it includes threats to basic food and water security that are caused by extreme weather or environmental events. And these risks, in this report it notes, these risks are also exacerbated by events that occur concurrently, such as the COVID-19 pandemic or things like technological disruption. And the consequence is really the most vulnerable people and communities are disproportionately impacted by these events. So our challenge as a community is how to rally information and our predictive expertise and capabilities to help nations avoid and respond and mitigate to these disasters. So if we move to slide 3, we all know this story. Climate change is impacting our society, our food, our water, our health security, our economy, our infrastructure, our ecosystems. And we're in a moment in time when global leaders are mobilizing and rallying and are committing to action, which is the good news. The scale of the changes and the regional implications vary greatly, and the connections between major global threats is an important driver for change. It's going to set the stage for how we need to work as a community going forward. And to illustrate that, in May 2021, the G7 climate and environment ministers issued a bold commitment statement that included that the recognition of the disproportionate impacts of climate change on the most vulnerable segments of society, the need for cooperation globally, regionally, locally to enhance adaptation and resilience, the need for driving innovation, and that included in clean tech and renewable energy, and how to mainstream nature-based solutions and work towards understanding the impacts of changes in our oceans that contribute to driving extreme weather and dramatically changing our ecosystems. And these were just a few of the elements in that statement. It's quite ambitious, but it will be clear to this audience that the collaboration across the weather enterprise has never been more important. So if we move to slide 4, the weather enterprise has a very long history of scientific collaboration. The WMO originated from the International Meteorological Organization, and that was founded in 1873, specifically to facilitate the exchange of weather information across borders. And in 1950, WMO became a specialized agency of the United Nations. This really heralded a new era of international cooperation in the field of meteorology, hydrology, and some of the related geophysical sciences. And for over 70 years, WMO has fostered collaboration in weather sciences and in services. And throughout those decades, WMO and its members have created the systems and framework for targeted collaborative research, real-time data exchange, numerical weather and climate modeling advances, but in particular, a strong commitment to enabling capacity development around the world. And I think this is something from a Canadian perspective that really resonates with that. Our goal here is to improve the lives of citizens globally. We move to slide 5. I definitely say that these collaborative efforts have yielded important benefits to society over the decades. And there are just a few examples on this slide of some of the ways in which WMO created the programs and initiatives to help meet these needs. For example, a global observing system has provided a very solid foundation for international exchange of observations from the Earth's surface, its atmosphere, space, and they do it by standardizing techniques and practices that can eventually feed, global telecommunication or other collaborative information systems. When the World Weather Research Program and the World Climate Research Programs were established, they provided very strong platforms for purpose-driven research collaboration. And without a doubt, it's provided the foundation for the improvement to model and predict Earth systems. I would say also, major outcome-based collaborations, which are aimed at providing sound science and research information to policymakers. That includes the IPCC process. Those continue to be critical rallying points for global action. And more recently, some of the newer sort of launches include understanding the role of polar prediction for global Earth systems processes, and a strong call to action on the importance of understanding hydrological processes to support global water security. And if we move to the next slide, without a doubt, Canada benefits greatly from our international relationships and engagement with WMO. And over the decades, we've had strong participation, including in leadership roles. And as you all know, my predecessor and good friend, David Grimes, was president of WMO for 2 terms and really was instrumental in leading quite a lot of what I'm going to talk about later in terms of looking to the future and trying to drive changes that would better position our community. And so we're committed to continuing our engagement in WMO, and we're hoping to enhance the participation of our Canadian experts in the WMO programs of work in the coming decade. And we truly believe that Canada's engagement and the contribution we make to the global scientific efforts are fundamental both for our national interests, but also Canada's place in the world. So if we move to slide 7, I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the strategic plan and directions of WMO. If I focus a little bit on the strategic plan for 2020 to 2023, this includes 5 long-term goals, and these reflect the global drivers that I've just described. So goal 1 is to better serve societal needs, and this is by delivering authoritative, accessible, fit-for-purpose information for services. Enhancing Earth system observations and predictions, that's a strategic goal that will only become more important, and I'll illustrate that later throughout the deck. Advanced targeted research continues to be a main goal, and closing the capacity gap as well to help disadvantaged citizens across the globe. And all of those are supported by the 5th goal, which is to realign the WMO structures and programs to better position us for the future, ensure effective policy decision-making and implementation, and a more efficient organization. And finally, in that strategic plan, there are 3 objectives that or 3 priorities that I'll just highlight, because they're essentially positioned to try to drive progress towards supporting UN Sustainable Development Goals. So the first one is enhancing preparedness for hydrometeorological extremes. The second is supporting climate smart decisions. And thirdly, to enhance societal and socioeconomic benefits of our services. So moving through from that to slide 8, to address those global drivers and deliver on that plan, the WMO embarked on this governance reforms based on the direction of Congress in 2019. And there it was a recognition that we were at a turning point in terms of our business, seeing that we moved from 8 large technical commissions to 2 new integrated commissions, ones that focus on infrastructure and the other focuses on services. There are additional structures, including a research board, a hydrological coordination panel, to help to be able to drive priorities and changes through into the main technical commissions. But the idea behind this integration is that the basic systems need to support all of the topics and functions that had previously been addressed in the 8 technical commissions. And a strong unified goal is to rapidly advance Earth system modeling and science capabilities. And so in addition to this, the continued drive that WMO has always had on climate research and advocacy continues. It has never been more important, so that is still a strong commitment. And there is a new emphasis, as I mentioned, on the critical role of hydrological and ocean system science to help support the advancements of operational systems and our vision going forward. And so moving to slide now, I'm going to just talk a little bit about a couple of the current policy drivers and opportunities that are being led by WMO that I think are particularly important and will be important in Canada. And the first one really is linked to the principle of free and unrestricted data exchange, which is fundamental to cooperation between the national hydrometeorological organizations at WMO, and important for leveraging the data that's shared by the global community. So we're going to go to slide 10. And if some of you tuned in to Jim Young's talk yesterday, you might have heard some of the details about this. But essentially, the context of this, of course, is that millions and millions of observations are shared daily across our community. And the availability and access to this observational data are essential and will continue to be essential, particularly as we advance in our predictive capabilities. And despite all of the collaboration that we've been able to master to date, the global community is seeing a number of challenges ahead in managing and effectively using the skyrocketing amount of data. So building on initiatives such as WMO's Integrated Global Observing System, or WIGOS, which is helping to advance that governance system using the traditional methods like data standards, et cetera. We need to move beyond that and look at what some of those new drivers that are happening might create in terms of opportunities and challenges. So on slide 11, I just go a little bit into this to try to set the stage. So despite the volume of data collected and exchanged by the global community, we've recognized that there are some gaps in ground-based observations that are threatening potentially the quality of our services and certainly the development of predictive systems in the future. And it's recognized that we needed some new concepts and collaboration and capacity in order to overcome this. So what this slide shows, it's a very busy slide, but it's a global picture of a distribution of observing stations. Green showing where there's the ideal state in terms of numbers and spatial representation of stations, and areas where there are less spatial observations that are being received. So the new collaboration and the new approach here is to have worked to create a global basic observing network concept, which offers a new systematic approach to basic surface-based observation network design, and to assure that the most essential data at a minimal level of spatial resolution is available across the globe. And a key challenge is that many of the areas of the globe that are currently the most data sparse are also where some of the most vulnerable communities reside in nations which are least able to be able to invest and maintain this kind of infrastructure. And so the overall goal is, by creating this global framework with very well-recognized standards, that we can engage differently with the funding communities and the donors community to try to close the gap. And one example of that WMO is championing is the Systematic Observations Financing Facility. So this is a new concept where various funding agencies, including places like the World Bank, et cetera, are going to be working with an alliance of hydromet providers in the private sector, so that there is more organization, sustainability in the funding and the investments and the installation of the infrastructure. So in the past, what would happen is many of us would, direct donor funding or aid to countries that went for investing in infrastructure. Maintenance money wasn't there, capacity development wasn't there to support the people who needed to deal with the instruments. And so, they failed. New waves of funding we would see other instruments being installed that weren't compatible. So it wasn't sustainable. So I applaud this effort. I think, we needed to think of things differently. This is just getting up and running, and I encourage you to learn about it. We'll certainly be watching it and hopefully participating in it going forward. So if we move to slide 12, just to reiterate a message that I'll say several times in this talk, these basic observations are crucial in order to support the vision of robust, seamless Earth system models. And that is essentially because even if the infrastructure there are gaps in Africa, we need those observations to improve the full modeling capacity globally. And that is what is required in order to generate the services for our citizens, wherever they may be. So moving to slide 13. Now I will get a little bit more into data policy. Among the thousands of resolutions adopted by the World Meteorological Congresses over the 7 decades of its existence, Resolution 40, which was adopted in 1995 on data policy, was really a watershed moment for WMO. And it was a response at that time to a growing trend in the 80s in the commercialization of meteorological data and services, which created uncertainty about the ability in the future to maintain free and open exchange of data that were now essential for the modeling systems. This resolution, which was a hard one and difficult one to actually create, it did lead to stability by reconfirming the commitment to the exchange of essential data. So as WMO and the members look towards Earth system modeling and the future. We foresee the need to collect data and share more and different types of data. And there is also an important shift in the capacity of the private sector to participate cost effectively in the collection and in the data exchange partnerships. So at this point in time on the right, just a few key notes to say that there is a draft resolution that we're all currently working on that hopefully will provide clarity around the principle of free and unrestricted exchange of information and apply to the broader partnership involved in collecting data, including the private sector, academia, other government departments, et cetera. And so if adopted, this new policy will create some new opportunities. That's very exciting. There'll also be some new challenges that we'll have to work through, including how to create the instruments and mechanisms which are fair to all parties. So if as a meteorological service, we embark in a arrangement with the private sector to provide turnkey solutions or data, we will have to consider the way that our partnership and our contracts are set up so that it's fair to the private sector and we can still share our data internationally. So moving to slide 14, I would say that similarly, WMO and its members have recognized that new ways of collaborating were needed, which brought in views and expertise of different partners and stakeholders. And this slide has a few sort of what I would call pathfinder efforts, such as the Global Framework for Climate Services. And what that particular initiative at the world stage did was recognize that we needed to maximize our global science and data by purposefully reaching out to vulnerable sectors, weather vulnerable sectors, such as health, water, food security, and disaster risk reduction, to align the goals and build bridges with other global agencies and at the regional level and at the national level. In addition, it also did what we do well normally, which articulate grand challenges in research. However, we tried to articulate those in a targeted way that would help solve the issues or support the sector needs that had been identified through the assessment process. So this is an example of Pathfinder. There are other ones that are going on right now. And more recently, I would say a good example is that the WMO assembled a community of global experts to deliberate on the major challenges related to water security. And as you can appreciate, that meant needing to bring people from a wide range of disciplines, but also organizations. And what really struck me out of that dialogue, out of that assembly, was these 8 ambitions or high-level goals that are on this slide. And these ambitions are now driving strategic planning. And to me, I look at them and I see how much they resonate on Canada, and I'll let you read through them. And I'm going to segue that just at this point in time to say why this is important to Canada. I mean, we are blessed with incredible hydrological resources in Canada. And we've have a long history of, especially in the MSC, of understanding water quantity. The challenge going forward is with all of the threats to water security and all of the integration that's needed, we needed to hear more about what was the approach we would take in Canada going forward in order to assure the sustainability of Canada's water resources. So there is a political commitment that has been reiterated through 2 budgets to create a Canada Water Agency. That's a work in progress. There's been engagement processes happening for the past year, both in the form of workshops or engagement sessions. And what we've heard report has just been released. So some of the themes from that report included saying that it's essential that we have a coordinated and collaborative approach in Canada, that we need to enhance science and access to data. Watershed governance approaches will be essential as a way of approaching and addressing water-related management issues. Climate change impacts are a hugely important part of this. And the recognition of regional priorities in thinking about the user engagement and the stakeholder priorities is very key. As a final thing, there's now a sort of strong commitment through these engagement processes on engagement with communities, but particularly within Indigenous parties. And frankly, that water is a key theme for Indigenous reconciliation. So again, these are just two illustrations with a bit of insight as to why this could be particularly important for Canada. And so with that, we're segueing now on slide 15 into the Canadian context. So weather knows no borders. Canada is not immune to the economic impacts of severe weather and natural disasters. We illustrate this on this slide. If you listened in on the Cat IQ presentation, you heard the statistics very clearly yesterday. And so as you can see, we're seeing considerable increase in the frequency of the notable and catastrophic weather events. Insured damage for severe weather events across Canada reached over $2 billion in 2020, according to Cat IQ. And 2020 is now ranked as the fourth highest in insured loss years since 1983. So our context and our challenge mirrors the global context and challenge. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening within our weather services and some of the advances and challenges that we are facing. So on slide 16, we all appreciate this. Our vast geography, that we're very proud of, presents a unique challenge for monitoring and predicting complex weather trends. Our surface monitoring networks, this graph just gives a very high snapshot of all of our monitoring network stations. So we are dispersed across the country with the denser networks closer to the southern populated areas. And you can see very clearly this leaves an observing gap. So just think GBON and gaps, leaves an observing gap in our remote northern regions. And while that part of the globe or the country is sparsely populated, it does represent over 50% of Canada's landmass. So with our challenges from a monitoring infrastructure perspective, I would say that over a decade or so ago, the MSC was facing some significant rust out issues, significant impacts coming out of sort of program reduction scenarios in the government. So we embarked on a 10-year strategic planning exercise, including an investment plan. And we've been very fortunate to have received several rounds of new investments by government, including funds to renew the aging and deteriorating weather infrastructure, and securing the continued access to the necessary supercomputing capacity to support our modeling systems. And further to that, in 2018, we did secure funding to modernize the National Hydrological Service. And this included, again, dealing with rust out issues, but also investing in innovation, particularly in integrating hydrological and meteorological modeling capabilities. And this has all been great news. And we've made good progress in implementing the investments. We are aware, though, that going forward, we have new challenges and gaps that will need to be addressed. And so moving to slide 17, just to give you another glimpse of some of the success, in 2017, we announced the replacement of our weather radar network. And at that time, that network consisted of 31 radars, including 2 operated in partnership. We awarded the contract to buy and install 32 radars by March 31st in 2023, and we're well along that path. And I have to say that despite COVID and all of the issues that we've dealt with, keeping our critical services functioning this year, the radar replacement team has done an amazing job, because we're not only on track, we're well poised to stay on track until the end of the replacement project. And these new radars, using this more modern technology, will really allow our meteorologists to better detect significant events such as tornadoes and issue earlier warnings to Canadians. The tool is important. It will continue to be important for our meteorologists, but I'd like to say that it's also increasingly used by our modelers to enhance Earth system modeling. And so, that will be important going forward. And I'd like to turn now to another source of data that will become increasingly important. So if we move to slide 18, of course, weather satellites and the information they produce have always been a key data stream in numerical weather prediction. Increasingly, though, the missions and the sensors of other satellites are becoming essential information for the weather enterprise. and Earth system modeling advances in particular. So collaborations between the space agencies globally, that helps to support our business needs, of course, and open exchange, data exchange is critical to Canada. Having said that, we in Canada consume vastly more data than we're currently generating. And our data policies are currently restrictive, and they need to evolve to support open and free exchange in the future. The economic value of Earth observation is very important globally. And there are many studies that are out there that have reinforced the value that Earth observation data and its access will provide to the range of partners, including industry. And in Canada, we think there is also a great potential for economic benefits if we collaborate across the value chain in planning over longer horizons to create more certainty, and that if we have a vision of collaboration that extends from the upstream segment through to the downstream platforms and users. So having said that, our department is collaborating with federal partners to leverage the existing assets and to design infrastructure needed to make the most of this data source. And in slide 19, we talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing.
5 minutes, Diane?
The work we've been doing. So the SBEO strategy that's referenced on this slide is aimed at helping to provide a whole of society engagement. And it looks at an end-to-end approach. And the next steps of this is to continue engagement and communications with government operators, academia, industry, and invest in strategic international collaborations. And slide 20, just to highlight one thing, is, we're highly interested in the Arctic Observing Mission because of the value that would bring to both Canadian context and international efforts. And we're working right now to build a business case and partnerships to hopefully make it happen. And if we move to slide 21, again, working on our theme of history, we have been pioneers in the use of supercomputing in Canada. Investments in supercomputing have allowed us to increasingly use and combine information to improve the models. And investing in the future to enhance capacity jumps is part of the friendly global competition amongst all the major modeling centers. We are at the cusp now of seeing some major capacity investments in other countries and the accompanying innovations that will follow. So there we go. That's Canada's challenge, to see these investments and see what we can do ourselves. And so in slide 2022, we do have a detailed and long-term plan for driving innovations and research to operations. Next cycle of innovations is continuing along. It'll include an update to the national systems and further efforts to improve the representation of uncertainty through improvements in the perturbation of the global and regional ensembles. Our system at 2.5 kilometer resolution will now include its own dedicated 4D and VAR assimilation cycle, and that includes incorporating radar data. And I think I'll move to slide 23. And so really there is a recognition that approaching the weather enterprise from an Earth systems perspective is the way forward. And so really, what will this Earth system look like in Canada? We keep our eye on the leading centers, UK Met Office, Météo France, the Bureau, NOAA. They're all working towards a continuously improved integrated system. And they're looking at new ways of working with the academic sector in driving those innovations into their core modeling systems. And we're reflecting right now in Canada how we can amplify our innovation cycles by engaging differently with the academic and other sectors in Canada. So moving to slide 24, our concept there is continuously having innovation cycles, which include upgrades to a full cascade of subsystems. Some of them are coupled, some of them are one way, all working towards improving the predictions from a minute to seasonal timescales. And we operate the systems for the atmosphere, land and vegetation, ocean, ice, waves and lakes. And coupling with the hydrologic and hydrological models is also well underway. And we feel that with all these systems, we're becoming very well positioned to help to support the decision-making and policy agendas that our country will be addressing in the coming decades. Slide 25 just provides one example of a dedicated long-term collaboration across departments, Department of National Defense, ourselves, as well as DFO, the Fisheries and Oceans Department. And this is to tailor and use our capabilities to be able to provide details of ocean currents today and in the future. We'll know where things will drift, we'll increase shipping efficiency, we'll support e-navigation. People will spend more time rescuing rather than searching. We'll establish safer ice navigation routes with greater awareness and detail of forecast conditions. So this is a glimpse of the way we will continue to work in the future. And on slide 26, this is just a reflection that a data assimilation and prediction work together to drive intelligence. Sorry about that. To drive intelligence. And I think I'll move then to slide 27, just segue briefly into services. So here again, we're looking at how we will adjust our services over time. We're already a very highly automated weather service with under about 300 operational forecasters. And the role of the operational meteorologist is changing to add maximum value to the human and the human machine mix. So meteorologists will spend less time on routine product generation, and they'll increasingly combine their understanding of the current and evolving weather patterns with societal impacts. And that's to evaluate the posed risks and dangers and to communicate specifically with stakeholders like municipal, provincial, territorial, national authorities in supporting their operation, and to issue action-oriented alerts for the public. So for example, during Hurricane Teddy last fall, the MSC was able to detect and develop weather patterns and alerts for emergency management organizations. So this is slide 28. And we'll move through to slide 29. Like many national weather services, the MSC services are being transformed to focus on impact-based information for decision-making. Where we used to focus on short-range weather warnings and 7-day zone forecast narratives, we have shifted to focus on early notification and risk-based information for emergency managers. Our products and services are transitioning, and we're engaging in new digital information and social media platforms. And on slide 30, these new capabilities will soon be unlocking and orders of magnitude of data available all over the Earth system modeling with higher time frequency. And so data science will be at the center of this transformation. And through technological advances, such as quantum computing and cognitive science, we'll be entering into new domains. So I'm in my final slides. All these advancements will help us move towards a future capacity to predict our systems through a digital Earth. And slide 32, we are continuing our path to revitalize and transform. We're keeping our eye on these futures, and we hope to invest in all of the elements of the weather and climate prediction value chain. And finally, on slide 33, just to emphasize that we need to continue our collaborative efforts across society, and that'll be essential to generate new ideas and take action in the future. And so with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. I will read out some questions from the chat line and the question and answers. This one is from Claude Labine. With respect to water quality, this is a provincial matter. BC is the only province to have partnered with federal government on water quality. Over the years, it has led to confusion as to who is responsible. Also, we have seen in our area the Federal Department of Environment allowing the release of raw sewage in our waters. So that's a comment, I guess, rather than a question.
So thank you for the comment. And, it's been interesting through this process of engagement on the Canada Water Agency. As I mentioned when I was going through my presentation, there have been not only workshops, but there's been engagements with the provinces and territories. So we have a significant amount of feedback from them. And so there's three things. I mean, first, there needs to be, going forward in this concept of a water agency, a continued a respect for the provincial, territorial, and federal roles and responsibilities. And the federal responsibilities that have been talked about most that need to be amplified are things like coordination, science, data. And I think that's what will continue. So I don't think we will see major shifts in accountabilities when it comes to what the provinces and territories are responsible for with respect to water quality. I'm not sure how to comment on, the raw sewage from federal entities, but, I would say that it's in all our interests, and it's certainly the responsibility of all the parties to be taking the actions needed to safeguard our waters.
Question from Leonard Berry. He says that aerosols, ozone, and greenhouse gases are fundamental weather and climate drivers. There are 3 research programs, 2 of which you've mentioned, but the third is the Global Atmospheric Watch Program, GAW, which
Yes.
MSC in Canada supports strongly. Please comment.
Absolutely supports. We've continued to support that, and we've been strong voice actually through the WMO reform to make sure that the Global Atmospheric Watch is positioned well in the Infrastructure Commission and includes actually how it's being overseen, and the commitment more than is there to continue it.
Okay, and Christopher Subich, which stakeholders are likely to oppose the update to WMO Resolution 40 and why? Is it private sector actors hoping to keep proprietary data, states hoping to keep secrets, something else?
So I don't think anybody's going to oppose this. What is required really here is to be able to introduce new kinds of data. In the current policy, we focus on essential data. It really is a smallest set of essential data that is essential for the current operations of hydrometeorological operations. But when you get into our system modeling, you're now talking about data sets that haven't been on the table yet to be shared. So that requires agreement from the parties to be able to do it. So from a government perspective, that means Canada, I would have a role in this with my counterparts, is to get the agreement from a whole lot of other departments, including provinces and territories, that this is in everyone's interest. The issue with the private sector is not one of being opposed to it either. It's more of working to get the right fair practices and mechanisms in place. There's no doubt that going forward, we will be relying more on private sector capabilities for collecting basic data for us. They run a business. So it needs to be fair for them that if the mechanisms that they use, if they're engaging with Canada to provide us data, and Canada's providing it globally, and there is no cost benefit back for that global value to the company, then we're not going to achieve what we want. So that is what I meant by the challenges. And it's not really opposing it. It's more to negotiate and figure out how to keep sharing data, but also how to with the private sector, arrange mechanisms that are fair in sharing data that they actually provide.
Thank you. We have another question from Elvis Asong. It's a technical question. Is the 2.5 kilometer CALDIS system operational at the moment, i.e. HRDPS?
So I'll turn to one of my colleagues. Maybe you'll get your answer if you attend our symposium. We have one that's on modeling and systems, and we're intending to get into the details of what capabilities we have, what's operational versus what's still in a research mode.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is the last question. No, there's more coming, but Neil Swart, he's from the CCMA. Within ECCC, the Climate Research Division has been developing and running the Canadian Earth System model for 2 decades. I wonder how you see the relationship between weather prediction and climate projections in the department.
Well, so the first thing to say is that, if we start again at the globe there, I mean, the vision at the global level is to be eventually having a seamless prediction system. And how to work towards that means that there is various things that we have to overcome. in our department, when we use the word Earth system modeling, and I take the point that, the research capability and the research approach to be able to advance labeled Earth system modeling in Climate Research Division is fundamental, and it will continue going forward. The point I think that we're adding now is when we are looking at numerical weather prediction, the concepts there are also Earth system based. So the more that we start to talk in the department about the interaction and the advancement of both of these concepts, the better, because at the end of the day, this is the global trend that's taking place.
Veronique Boucher has actually answered the one question. Yes, the HRDPS is operational below 60 north. And a question from Peter Taylor. Where do universities fit in your public-private sector division? Do ECCC take enough advantage of university expertise?
So going forward, I mean, it's been interesting to see, the evolution over the decades, because without a doubt, the collaboration with the academic sector has been fundamental to the development of our advances and our services. Many of our players go back and forth between the academic sector, serving in the MSc, being in our research groups in our S&T branch in the department. Having said that, I think it's going to be very important in Canada that we, in our operational and research context, develop more of a strategic view of where the advances are needed, where the gaps are, and really help to create the opportunities for funding of those programs within the academic sector. When I talked to, I mentioned in my talk that, we're keeping an eye on the US, we're keeping an eye on the UK Met, because they're introducing new ways of having academic sector and other interested parties work with their modeling in a different way on interactive platforms. And so what will that mean for Canada if we do the same thing? I mean, it's a very interesting model. In order for it to be successful, we need a very strong academic sector. We need investments, and we need support, and we need to attract and maintain and retain the kind of experts in Canada and the Canadian academic sector that will help support this Canadian enterprise. So that's a long way of saying that as we're building our business case for the next 10 years, the role of the academic sector is very important in that. And the ability to attract and retain those experts in Canada is going to be fundamental to keeping a successful enterprise going in the future.
Thank you. Don Bryant of McCartney has said, do you see the possibility of an expansion of the Canadian Weather Buoy Network to include more autonomous assets, such as autonomous ocean gliders and unmanned vessels versus the existing moored in situ buoy platforms?
So everything's on the table. Maybe I'll just make a simple statement like that. I mean, as we've looked at the future of our networks, we're looking not only at replacement rust out, as I said, that was part of the last investment cycle, but we've also been investing in looking at what are the changes that need to take place, what are the replacements, what are the innovations that are coming out that we could adopt. I mean, the large moored buoys, it's a challenge globally. Being able to maintain them, it's expensive, it's difficult. So innovating in different ways with combinations of in situ types of measurements is where we are looking in the future. But it could also include partnerships with other parties who are actually running infrastructure, including buoy infrastructure.
Thank you. We have time for this one last question from Jeff Strong. Are there efforts to ingest more special research data sets into your data stream to ensure that it remains alive?
Well, again, I'm pretty sure if you look at the chat, the colleagues will probably answer that, but yes, I mean, that is always part of what we want to do, starting with really more the research side, as it then moves towards, an operationalization of it. So acquiring more of those data streams, being able to tag it and work with it is part of what we're doing between our research organization and then the operational entities at CMC.
Thank you, Diane. I think that's all the questions we have. And actually, we're just exactly on time at 9:20. So I want to thank you for a very good talk and lots of good questions and answers. Thank you very much.
And I'll just add, thank you very much, Diane. It's been a pleasure to see you, and we'll see you throughout the sessions. Certainly tomorrow, the first panel discussion. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, thank you. And I'll make a plug for that. Tomorrow, as part of our special symposium, we have a special conversation that's set up between Order of Canada winners. So we have a series of panelists who are going to reflect on their careers, but also on some of the significant challenges that they faced in their career. So I hope you'll join us for that.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.